it's final Sunday here at Indian Wells. We've got Caroline Wozniacki and Jelena Jankovic, and then Ivan Ljubicic and Andy Roddick in the men's final. And I'm Andrew from TennisWorld, and I'm here with Steve Tignor, who writes Concrete Elbow at tennis.com and is also executive editor for Tennis Magazine. And Steve's been in the business an awful lot longer than I am, so Steve, when you're a journalist coming to cover an event like this, what are you looking to do?
For me, writing a blog, I write a blog each day at tennis.com, so that's a little different from what I normally do. Normally I'm writing profiles of players or wrap-ups of tournaments. Here, being on site, I try to, basically my job or mission or whatever you want to call it is to write about my experience of this tournament, every part of it that I can, that I think would be interesting to fans, pretty serious fans, not casual tennis fans.
Because you're a tennis player as well, and so a lot of the time when you're writing on a blog, you're exploring what it's like to be a tennis player, and then sometimes possibly coming to a tournament like this, you're trying to look at it through the eyes of a tennis player as well.
I obviously didn't play at anything like the level that these guys play, but I played enough that I feel like I know what's going through their heads, or what certain shots that are good shots or bad shots, or certain reasons they played this or that, and I just feel like that's something you don't get from every sports journalist. If you can add that in, that anything extra like that I can add, I try to do.
What proportion of journalists who are covering an event like this are going to be tennis players or are going to be purely tennis journalists, do you think?
I think the vast majority are purely tennis journalists. I think there are definitely people who play tennis or are interested in tennis, but I don't think, not many of them played, say, college tennis or play a lot of serious tournament tennis or anything like that.
Okay.
I think the percentage is low.
All right. And then when you're covering an event like this, are you interested in following particular players? Is there any one or two people that you follow with more interest than others?
Well, I start the tournament looking for a new player that I haven't really seen or written about before. Like, if the first couple of days here I wrote about Janina Wickmeyer, who's a new Belgian player, I wouldn't come here on the first day and try to write about Roger Federer. I did end up writing about him early because he lost, but typically wait later to write about him. You write about the people who you think who are new, who you haven't seen, because I don't come to every tournament, I don't get to see everybody all the time, and who you think might lose fairly early, and then you hold off on the bigger names until later, because that's all you're going to be able to write about then. As far as following individual players, I look for, I'd say, if Nadal or Federer or Djokovic or Murray one of them's having trouble or is playing, it seems like is in a slump or something, maybe I'll look at them early.
Okay. And is this a rhythm that you've settled into when you're covering tournaments, or when you originally started doing this, is there something else that you looked for?
When I first started doing the blog, I did almost all just first-person observing, walking around the tournament. I really wanted to do it like a fan, which I thought was good, but eventually I came to enjoy or feel like the readers got more out of me actually interviewing players. And I first started by not really doing any of that because I thought that was covered by a lot of the other journalists, but I've added that in, and I don't just walk around like a fan now. I try to do it more like a traditional journalist.
Okay, and there's one myth that I'd like to potentially lay to rest. I mean, you're American. Is there, Andy Roddick's playing today, is there anything at all about being an American, covering an American tournament, that makes you write anything differently?
No, well, I write for tennis.com here, which is international. So and my blog is read by, I think, pretty serious or hardcore tennis fans, even in America, who don't necessarily love American players. I think that's true for tennis fans who follow the game all year. They follow, tennis fans in America who follow the game all year, they love Roger Federer, and maybe they love Rafa and Roger more than Andy. I don't feel like tennis fans here tennis fans who are really into it. I don't feel like there's a lot of national bias. So I don't have any bias towards Roddick. I like Roddick. He's not my favorite player to watch. Yesterday against Soderling, I didn't have any particular rooting interest. It wouldn't have helped me in any way that if Roddick won or lost. The only thing that may have been better in my mind for Roddick winning is that there'll be a rooting interest in the stadium today instead of Soderling and Ljubicic. There's a little more energy in the stadium because of Andy, but I would have liked to have seen Soderling in the final as well, just to see how he did in that situation. For me, the interest is in every player and their development.
And maybe one more question about the finals themselves. You know, what do you think that having these players in the final says about the current state of the game, either in the ATP or the WTA? I mean, the two baseline players in the WTA, Roddick and Ljubicic. Ljubicic may be unexpected, but top-level player for some time. Is there anything we can draw from that?
Yeah, I think it's something we've been talking about for a while. That especially here, this is one of the slowest courts in either tour. Is that it seems like defense is winning now, being solid, not taking too many risks. Wozniacki is a great example of that. Jankovic is also a counterpuncher. Roddick has become more of a counterpuncher over the years, and Ljubicic is as great a serve as he has. He's really a baseline. He's a baseline player. He doesn't really come in that much, or he stays back. And I think that's a general trend that we've seen for probably for 5 years, and it has been intensified in the last year or so when you see people like Murray, Djokovic, Roddick succeeding by really maybe backing up a little bit.
So for a lot of the players, it's winning by not losing, and that. Do you think that holds true of Nadal and Federer?
No. Maybe Nadal a little more. He is a little more defensive than Federer. But if you watched Nadal yesterday against Ljubicic, he had a ton of forehand winners, and he went for his forehand whenever he had a shot at it. It's definitely not true for Federer. You watch him live compared to everyone else, and it's not as if he's serving and volleying, but he is much more aggressive than say the other guys, than almost anyone else in the top 10. He's much more willing to take a big risk, or at least look to create, to open up a point.
Okay, and is there anyone in the WTA who has that kind of a mindset? Maybe.
Well, Justine, and of course Serena. They hit. One of the things is the one-hand backhand versus the two-hand backhand. Two-hand backhand is always going to be. You're less likely to come to the net with a two-hand backhand. You're much more solid and consistent with that shot. So that's going to be that's sort of the way your game is going to go if you have a two-handed backhand. Murray, Djokovic, Serena. But Justine has a one-handed backhand, so that gives her a little more variety, ability to come to the net, but it also makes her maybe a little less consistent, a little less solid, a little more. Maybe she's more apt to have a bad day when she's off.
Right. Well, hope it's a good final. Thanks for talking to me, and see you the next time.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.